If you've ever sat on a tractor, you've probably felt safe behind all that steel and power. But for most of the last century, some of those very machines were built like ticking time bombs, and the men and women who died on them thought they were just doing another day's work. A jacket sleeve near a spinning shaft, a turn taken at 5 miles an hour, a hot engine, and a splash of gasoline. Today, we're counting through 12 tractor features that killed thousands of farmers and the hard lessons that finally fixed them. Stick around because number 9 on this list is a killer most people have never even heard of, and it doesn't crush, it seeps. If you learned something today, hit subscribe and give this video a like. Let's start with the deadliest of all. Number 1, unshielded PTO shafts. January 1999. A dairy farm in Iowa. A 17-year-old high school student working part-time after class was helping the farmer pour sacks of feed supplement into a grinder mixer. The job was almost done. The farmer turned to close the hammer mill cover. The boy stood near the machine's driveline, a driveline whose safety shields had been missing the entire 6 months he'd worked there. The shaft was still turning. His clothing touched it, and he was gone before the farmer could even turn around. Investigators later wrote that at his age, he may never have understood that the bare spinning steel beside him was a hazard at all. The power takeoff shaft revolutionized farming. For the first time, a tractor could power the equipment behind it. Mowers, augers, balers, feed mixers, through one spinning steel shaft. But for decades, that shaft ran completely exposed, and a PTO at standard speed turns 540 revolutions per minute, 9 full rotations every second. Anything that touches it, a glove, a sleeve, a drawstring, wraps instantly. No warning, no pause, no pulling free. Investigators have documented bodies pulled around the shaft in less time than it takes to shout. And the federal case files repeat that story with terrible consistency. A 41-year-old Minnesota farmer whose jacket sleeve caught while unloading feed pellets in 2001. A New York dairyman who reached across a bare shaft to adjust a manure pump chute. Routine moments, everyone. Manufacturers eventually offered guards and rotating shields, but many operators removed them, convinced experience would protect them. It took regulation to make shielding standard, and the rules haven't changed since because the PTO never got safer at its core. Shut it off before you dismount, keep every shield in place, and never step over a spinning shaft. Walk around, every time. It remains the perfect example of farming's hardest truth. The most useful machines are often the least forgiving. But the danger doesn't end here. The next killer was rolling underneath the operator the whole time. Number 2, steel lug wheel. Before rubber tires became standard, tractors rolled on solid steel wheels fitted with thick, jagged lugs that dug into the soil like claws. In a plowed field, they were unstoppable. On anything harder than mud, they became a hazard with a throttle. Zero shock absorption, every impact hammering straight through the rigid frame, the whole machine bouncing and skidding on hard or frozen ground, until drivers were shaken off their seats, sometimes under their own wheels. And a spinning rear wheel turned those cleats into rotating blades that took the feet and legs of farmhands who slipped too close. Early machines like the Fordson and the big roomily oil pull models wore these wheels by default, praised for traction and dreaded on any road. The lugs tore up pavements so badly that states like Iowa and Minnesota eventually banned them from paved surfaces outright. The revolution came from the tire companies. In the 1930s, Firestone and Goodyear pushed pneumatic rubber tires hard, and farmers who tried them never went back. Smoother, surprisingly grippy, easier on fuel. Within a decade, steel lugs had all but vanished, surviving today as rusty relics propped against barn walls. Effective traction at far too high a human cost. But the danger doesn't end here. The next feature attacked the operator before the engine even started. Number 3, hand crank starting systems. Before electric starters, waking a tractor meant standing directly in front of the engine and spinning a steel crank by hand. When an engine backfired, that crank snapped backward with the full force of combustion behind it. Broken wrists, dislocated shoulders, shattered forearms, an injury so common that doctors of the era had a name for the distinctive fracture it left behind. In 1948, Saskatchewan farmer Cecil Harris was pinned alone under the lugged steel wheel of his tractor. Knowing what was coming, he scratched into the fender with his pocket knife. "In case I die in this mess, I leave all to the wife." He died that night. That fender was accepted in court as his legal will, and it sits in a law library today. The Fordson Model F, built from 1917 to 1928, made tractors affordable for the ordinary farmer, and earned a dark reputation for mangling anyone who mishandled its starter. Experienced men learned the survival grip, thumb on the same side as the fingers, never wrapped around the handle, so a kickback threw the hand clear instead of taking the arm. And there was a second, crueler danger. Engines left in gear. A tractor that started while in gear lunged forward instantly, and the person standing in front of it had nowhere to go. By the late 1930s, battery systems matured, electric starters spread across every major brand, and one of farming's most reliable sources of broken bones simply disappeared. The next danger didn't break bones at all. Number 4, exhaust systems and emissions. On older tractors, the exhaust ran through the worst real estate on the machine, along the frame ahead of the operator, under the seat, beside the footrests, so the driver worked for hours inside his own engine's plume. In the open field, it made men dizzy and headachy by supper. In an enclosed barn, it could be lethal because carbon monoxide is colorless, odorless, and patient. More than a few farmers who thought they were just tired were being quietly poisoned in their own buildings. The placement burned as well as poisoned. Pipes hot enough to blister skin sat inches from a worker's leg, and uncovered mufflers threw sparks into dry chaff, starting barn fires that outran every bucket brigade. The fix, when it came in the 1950s, was almost embarrassingly simple. Route the exhaust vertically, up a stack above the engine, carrying gases, heat, and sparks away from the operator instead of at him. Mufflers, shields, and sealed cabs finished the job. Sometimes the difference between dangerous and safe is nothing more than which direction a pipe points. Next, the design that made tractors tip over at walking speed. Number 5, tricycle front ends. The tricycle front end was once a symbol of innovation. 2 small front wheels set close together under the engine, sometimes just one, letting farmers steer precisely between crop rows. On paper, it made perfect sense, and machines like the Farmall H&M carried the design across America through the 1940s and beyond. But the narrow stance that gave them agility robbed them of stability, all that weight high and centered over a footprint barely wider than a wheelbarrow. One rut, one hidden hole, one tight turn, and the tractor rolled before the operator could react. Accident records from that era rank narrow front rollovers among the leading causes of farm deaths, and the machines flipped at speeds that sound impossible. A shallow ditch at 5 miles an hour was enough, because once a tricycle tractor tilted past its narrow balance point, the operator had less than 2 seconds to react, with no roll bar and no cab to catch him. Heavy rear implements shifted the balance further, turning a twitchy design treacherous. Wide front axles gradually took over, and by the 1970s, the tricycle design was fading into history, a clever idea that traded stability for precision and made farmers pay the difference. The next feature never crushed anyone. It just took something no doctor could ever give back. Number 6, excessive tractor noise. This killer worked slowly, and that's exactly why it did so much damage. An old open station tractor at full throttle hammered its operator hour after hour, inches from an unmuffled engine, and the result is one of agriculture's quietest epidemics. Farmers suffer some of the highest rates of noise-induced hearing loss of any occupation, and the damage is permanent. It starts with ringing ears after a long day, then conversations that get harder to follow, then a world that slowly goes muffled, and it never comes back. For scale, safety guidelines flag sustained exposure above 85 decibels as damaging, and old open tractors under load routinely blew past 100, a level where hearing damage is measured in minutes per day, not hours. And the danger wasn't only in the ears. Noise accelerates fatigue and dulls reaction time, and a deafening engine masks the sounds that save lives. A shout of warning, a child's voice, the change in pitch that says something behind you is about to break. The fix arrived with the modern cab, sealed insulated cabs of the early 1970s, John Deere's Soundguard being the famous example, cut operator noise dramatically, and Europe went further, writing cab noise limits into regulation, which is why quiet safety cabs became standard across EU farming earlier than almost anywhere else. Today's operator hears a hum where his grandfather absorbed a roar and keeps his hearing into old age because of it. If this video is teaching you something, tap that like button and subscribe. It's free, unlike the hearing aids this section is about. Next up, the design that turned the most routine chore of the day into a fire hazard. Number 7, open fuel tanks near hot engines. Early gasoline tractors carried their fuel in the worst possible place, directly above or beside a hot engine, often gravity-feeding fuel because pumps added cost and complexity. The tank sat inches from a manifold that glowed after a day's work, right where a tired farmer poured from a sloshing can at dusk, and gasoline vapor ignites at the whisper of a spark, while a hot manifold doesn't even need one. Refueling fires were a constant of the era. Fuel splashed onto hot metal, Vapor found the magneto, and in seconds a machine parked beside a wooden barn full of dry hay became a torch. Farmers were burned over their hands, faces, and chests doing the most routine task in their day, and barn fires that started at the fuel cap took out entire winters of feed. The fixes came in layers. Tank placement moved away from exhaust heat, filler necks moved away from the operator's position, caps sealed properly and vented safely. And the biggest fix of all was the fuel itself, the industry's long migration from gasoline to diesel, which resists ignition so stubbornly you can drop a lit match into it under most conditions and watch it go out. Modern refueling rules: engine off, engine cool, never in an enclosed building, keep a proper extinguisher within reach, are written in the ash of 1,000 barn fires nobody documented and nobody forgot. But nothing on this list has killed like what comes next. Number 8, no rollover protection. For most of tractor history, there was nothing above the operator's head but sky, and that single missing piece of steel killed more farmers than every other feature on this list. Overturns have long been the leading cause of death in American agriculture, because a tractor carries its weight high, and on a slope or near a ditch, the tipping point arrives faster than human reflexes, past the point of no return in under a second, with 3 or 4 tons following the operator to the ground. The bodies piled up from the very beginning. One survey found that 136 drivers died in overturn accidents on American farms between 1918 and 1922, involving just one tractor model, the Fordson F, whose high hitch point could flip it over backward onto its operator. And the deaths never stopped. In 2004, a New York farm owner was hauling hay down a steep farm lane he'd driven his whole life, his 15-year-old grandson following on a second tractor. The loaded wagon, 4 tons of hay pushing a 2-ton tractor, shoved him sideways, jackknifed, and rolled the machine on top of him. His 1969 tractor had no roll bar and no belt. His grandson found him. The fix existed decades before most farmers got it. Sweden became the first country to require rollover protective structures, ROPS, all the way back in 1959, and the results read like a miracle. In 1959, 34 Swedish drivers died in tractor overturns. In the 4 years after cabs and frames spread, exactly 1 driver died in a rollover on a cab-equipped tractor, and he died because he jumped out of the cab, while his passenger, who stayed inside, walked away. Across Europe, full safety cabs became the standard long before America followed. In the United States, ROPS only became mandatory on employee-operated tractors built after the mid-1970s. And even then, the millions of older tractors already on farms were never required to be retrofitted. That's the quiet tragedy of this story. A simple certified roll bar combined with a seatbelt prevents nearly all deaths in overturn accidents. The numbers are close to 99%. Yet thousands of pre-ROPS tractors are still working American farms today, which is why rollovers still kill farmers every single year, decades after the problem was solved on paper. The steel was never expensive. The lesson was, and it's still being taught with rebate programs now helping owners retrofit roll bars onto old tractors, because the machines most likely to kill today aren't new ones. They're 50-year-old survivors still doing chores on small farms. Before we continue, drop a comment below if you or someone you know ever had a close call with a tractor. Those stories teach more than any statistic. Alright, here it is. The killer most people have never heard of. Number 9, unprotected cabs during pesticide spraying. This is the one from the intro, the danger that doesn't crush or entangle. It seeps. For decades, farmers sprayed crop chemicals from open tractors or ordinary cabs, riding for hours inside a drifting cloud of compounds designed to kill living things. The exposure wasn't dramatic, a fine mist, a taste in the air, and that was exactly the problem. It accumulated season after season, and agricultural health studies have linked long-term applicator exposure to chronic illnesses. Nobody connected to the job until years too late. Ordinary cabs made it crueler, trapping drifting chemicals inside with the operator. The modern answer is the pressurized filtration cab. Today's highest protection spraying cabs by Category 4 seal the operator in and hold the cab at positive pressure, so air can only leak outward, never in, while every breath entering passes through carbon filtration, built to strip out chemical vapors and aerosols. The operator works inside a clean air bubble rolling through a treated field, protected not by luck or a bandana but by engineering. And the systems around him evolved too, with closed chemical transfer equipment that fills the sprayer without a splash ever reaching human skin. It's the newest chapter of the same century-long story. Farming found another invisible way to hurt the people who feed everyone else, and engineering eventually answered. Now back to the old iron and a hazard that powered entire farms while it maimed them. Number 10. Exposed fan belts and belt drives. Before hydraulics and modern PTOs took over, tractors transferred power through wide, flat spinning belts, driving threshers, sawmills, corn shellers, and grinders from a pulley on the tractor's side. The setup worked, and it put the operator inches from open, running machinery with no guard in between. Those belts moved fast, and anything that touched them was yanked toward the pulley faster than a human could flinch. Even when nothing went wrong, they were weapons in waiting, building tension, slipping without warning, occasionally snapping mid-operation into a whip of leather that could knock a grown man off his feet. Routine work was the deadliest part. Tensioning a belt meant reaching close to moving parts while the system ran, a chore that crushed fingers across the country, while a slipping belt generated friction heat that sparked fires in the driest material a farm produces. Guards existed, optional, inconvenient, and frequently discarded. The real fix was replacing the whole system. Shielded PTO drives took over the job, easier to guard, safer to disconnect, and operated from the seat instead of beside the machinery. One of farming's most overlooked hazards ended not with a guard, but with a better idea. But when the sun went down, another killer owned the road. Number 11. No road lighting or safety markings. Early tractors were designed for fields, not roads. No headlights, no tail lamps, no reflectors. But as fields scattered, tractors began sharing narrow rural roads with cars, and at dusk they became nearly invisible. A dark, slow shape, marked by nothing more than a lantern tied to a fender. A car at 50, closing on a tractor crawling at 10 eats the gap in seconds, and through the 1940s and 50s, motorists slammed into wagons and hitches before their headlights ever explained what was ahead, with the operator seated high and unrestrained, taking the worst of it. The solution became one of the most successful safety symbols ever created, the slow-moving vehicle emblem, that fluorescent orange triangle with the red border, developed by researchers at Ohio State University in the early 1960s. States required it on every tractor using public roads, along with headlights, tail lamps, and flashers, and fatal rear-end collisions dropped sharply. A piece of reflective plastic costing less than a lunch, solving a problem that had killed for 30 years. Even so, old habits died slowly. Unlit tractors kept causing wrecks well into the 1980s, driven by owners who figured a short trip in the dark was harmless. The triangle on the back of every modern tractor says otherwise, which leaves the simplest feature of all for last, a strap of fabric that took half a century to earn its place. Number 12. No seatbelts. Early tractors held their operators in place with nothing but gravity and good luck. A bare metal seat, no belt, no barriers, an open platform with pedals crowded next to spinning parts. Every rut and sharp turn tried to throw the driver off, and on rough ground it regularly succeeded. Farmers fell under their own rear wheels doing nothing more dramatic than plowing a field. And here's the detail most people never learn. The belt only became a lifesaver once the roll bar existed. Strapped in with no rollover protection meant being held in place while the machine came down, which is exactly why belts and ROPS arrived as an engineered pair. The belt keeps the operator inside the protected zone the roll bar creates, and together they turn a rollover from a likely funeral into a story told at the coffee shop. It took decades for that pairing to become standard equipment, and thousands of operators spent those decades trusting their balance and reflexes more than the machine. Some of them are the reason the rules changed. 12 features, one pattern, every fix on this list: the roll bar, the rubber tire, the electric starter, the shield, the triangle, the sealed cab. Looks obvious in hindsight, and everyone arrived decades after farmers started dying for its absence. Machines get built for work first and safety second, and the people in the seat pay the tuition in between. So here's the question for the comments. Which of these deadly designs do you think was the hardest lesson learned? And have you ever run equipment that still had one of them? Let us know below, because those stories keep this history alive. If you learned something new today, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more stories about the machines that built farming, and stay safe out there.